Good morning. I'm Tara, and there's Rebecca, and we are Canada Reads American Style, and this is our monthly YouTube episode of Reading from Our Shelves, where we really highlight the books one way or another that we've either read from our shelves, that we've added to our shelves, which we're trying not to do. We're trying to read from our shelves. So this is our way of really not forcing, because there's no forcing in reading, but just really like encouraging us to read
Yes.
from our actual bookshelves.
Yeah.
So welcome. Morning,
Yeah.
Rebecca.
Hey, good morning. Yeah, that's so funny. I like that. I actually feel I forced myself because, as everybody knows, or many people know by now, I don't like to buy books. I like to just read in the moment. I like to just grab something in the moment. I'm a mood reader. And so the more books I buy, actually, the more stress I feel.
Mhm.
So today, I am going to share, I have 10 books.
Nice.
These 10 books I have to finish by the end of the year for my own peace of mind.
Yep.
Nobody else's rules, my rules. So
Yep.
I'm going to share those 10 titles today because I just feel like it'll help me focus. And I still will have plenty of time in the next so many months, what's 4 months left, to read things I want to read as a mood thing, right? But
Yeah.
I got to buckle down and get these done. So, first book I want to talk about, I don't know, you and I kind of talked about, I think, maybe reading it at the same time, not officially a buddy read, but I need to read The Circle
Oh, yeah.
because this is the third book in this series by Katherena Vermette. I cannot wait to read it. And I kind of wanted to read it sooner just because I just read the second book, which was The Strangers, because the
Hmm.
first one was The Break. Right. And so anyway, I want to read The Circle. I cannot wait to see sort of how it all plays out. And in fact, it was funny because I loved The Break, absolutely loved The Break, but I love The Strangers a little bit more.
Yeah.
And now I'm kind of hoping that I just love this one the most. That would be kind
Okay.
of fun.
Well, we need to discuss this offline then, because I have it in, because I am not a mood reader. I like
Mhm.
to do like prepare a little stack at the beginning of each month that I want to read, and that's in my stack for September. So
Beautiful.
offline, let's you and I set
Okay,
something up. Yeah,
sounds good.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, my first one. So my books are all going to be books that I've read from my shelf, and I'm going to start off with a little controversy. Not really. It's my latest Mary Lawson book. So Road Ends, which I loved. I know you and I discussed this, I think, on our last book chat, the audio, on our audio book chat, uh,
Yeah.
because we both love Mary Lawson, but this was not a winner for Rebecca, but it was for me. Like again, I loved it. Oh, I should give a little. Do I want to give a little story? I always forget to give like a little setup to this when we do it this way. Oh my gosh. Oh, it's set in Strawn, which is the area in Ontario where her books usually happen. Oh yes, it's the family. It's the really dysfunctional family where the mother seems to only have babies and then cocoon for the year, and while the rest of the family, the many siblings, and the inattentive father try and get through life. And yeah, it's just a very dysfunctional family. Early 1900s Ontario. I loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and again, we've said this so many times before. We love Mary Lawson. Her writing is just so beautiful. And I always say that it makes you feel like you're really living in there amongst them. And it just feels very cozy, I mean, the whole setting and the way she writes. Anyway, I love it. So, I mean, I don't love that book, but
Yeah,
I love
but you
Mary
love her.
Lawson. I love, and I actually still loved the story. I mean, I love the writing of the story. I loved that. I just didn't care for some of the things that happened. So, okay, my second book. See, y'all have seen this one so many times because I've said like, "Oh, I'm going to read it next" or something, and then it's a mood thing, and I don't really read it the way I say I will. But it's Driving the Green Book: A Road Trip Through the Living History of Black Resistance, and basically, back during the Jim Crow era, if Black people wanted to travel in the United States, they had a book, literally had a green book that showed them businesses where they were safe to hotels or restaurants or whatever. And I really have been wanting to read this book forever, and I can't wait to read it. And it is going to be done by the end of this year. Uh, there was a movie, I believe. I don't know if it was just called The Green Book or something, but this kind of thing. I don't know if it was based on this or what, but anyway, I'm really looking forward to reading this because it's been on my list for so long.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm looking forward to hearing about it.
Yeah. And it's a road trip book. I love a road trip.
I
So,
love a road trip too. Any
yep,
book that has a road trip in it, I'm gung ho right from the beginning. Love a road
same
trip
here.
in real life, and I love a book about a road trip. They're the
Yep, same
best.
here.
Yeah. Okay. My next book is a book of poetry. I've been doing pretty good the last couple of years of working poetry regularly into my reading, but the last 4 months I've done terribly. I've done
Mm.
terribly. I've been waylaid by a lot of library books coming in, and then my own books, and then nonfiction, and poetry has just keeps popping out of my mind. So I finally picked up this book, which I had started several months ago. We got it from Halle and River Street Writing through her, and it is Deviant poems by Patrick Grace. And the poems focus on the queer self discovery from like childhood to adulthood, and then also explores themes of domestic violence that happen in those man on man. Well, I don't like the way I said that, but we know
Yep.
what I mean. Relationships. I really enjoyed it. There were some poems that I didn't quite connect with, but as a whole, I really enjoyed it. And I hate to say the ones I enjoyed, the ones that, because it's not enjoy, but the ones on the domestic violence really brought something that I don't think we hear about very often, the domestic violence that will happen in these kind of relationships. So
Yeah.
I quite enjoyed it.
Has he written other things? Does he mostly write poetry, or do you know if he's written anything else in terms of
I think just mostly poetry.
poetry?
This says published two chap books and poems have appeared in many
Oh,
literary magazines. So this may even be his first like book of poetry, published book of
yeah.
poetry. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we have Eden Mills coming up, the book fair that Tara introduced me to, and I went last year for the first time, had a fantastic time. I just loved it so much. And I bought the next couple books came from that last year, and we are getting ready to go again in next
Yep.
week or a week and a half or something like that. But anyway, and we'll all be there. So
Very soon.
we hope we'll see you there. And if you see us, say hi. That would be really, wouldn't that be kind of cool if somebody said, "Hey, I watched you on a whatever." That'd be cool.
It might
Okay.
freak me out a little bit, but it would be cool at the same time too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a people person, so if somebody says it to me, I'm going to be like, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
So, I mean, not that you're not a people person, you know what I'm saying? I'm like
Oh
that
no, I
sort.
know. And
So,
I was going to say, and it wouldn't freak me out. I would just be like,
yeah,
don't be
ex-
surprised if you see a stunned look on this face if that should happen.
I love it. So, anyway, this one came from last year. This is Try Not to Be Strange. And it's really the description in the front is not very poor, but I'll give you the basic. It just says it's Try Not to Be Strange, the curious history of the kingdom of Redonda tells for the first time the complete history of Redonda's transformation from an uninhabited guano encrusted island into a fantastical and international kingdom of writers. And it's a nonfiction, but it's like people became like the king of the island, and it was like a big thing that like writers and artistic people celebrated. It's like a weird story of this island. And I have to laugh because our good friend Sarah, she wants to read this book as well. And then she had even sent me, this is hilarious because she and I are geography people. She sent me a copy of the island so that I could get a sense of the island itself. But it's this weird story of people, even though it's uninhabited, people say they're like the king of it. They've never visited or whatever. It's a really
Oh,
weird story, but it sounds absolutely fascinating. So,
yeah. It sounds like a Rebecca book. I remember you
oh,
buying that one now.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally a Rebecca book. Yeah.
Okay. My next one is okay. One of my yearly reading goals, it's going to take several years, is to read through the backlist of Helen Humphreys, a Ontario writer. And so my latest book This is my most recent Helen Humphreys. It's called Wild Dogs. So prior to this book, I think all of the Humphreys books that I've read have been like historical fiction, really good historical fiction, generally set in Toronto. This is not historical fiction. So
Mm,
it's like set contemporary, and even the writing style was different because there's multiple POVs you get the from each character. So it was very unusual that way, and from what I've read of hers, but still brilliant. So the story is there's a group of people who visit a pack of dogs who are on the outskirt of the town that they live on. So they've come together. These dogs used to be their pets, and for one reason or another, they've found their way into this pack of now wild dogs that live on the outskirts of their town, and they go each night to visit them at the chance of perhaps seeing them, and maybe the dogs will come back. It's a beautiful story because you get each, I think there's like 5 or 6 of these people, and they're very, like, they're not friends beforehand. They're all very different, and they come together under this common theme of these dogs. And you get each of their stories. It's sometimes it's a little sad. It's not like it's not a happy story at times. But you get this themes of like wild versus tamed, and it's a really, I wasn't sure when it started. I was like, I'm not sure where this is going. And
yeah,
then I just trusted her, and it was beautiful. I've never heard of this book until I saw it in a bookstore. But Wild
okay.
Dogs.
I have to admit, that is the first Humphreys book I will read. I mean, I want to read the others. You talked about them and they really do sound fantastic. But theme or setting, I love that. I love dogs. So,
Yeah.
it reminds me of when I read 15 Dogs by Andre
Alexa.
Alexis.
I think.
I think so.
Yeah.
Anyway, it just, I mean, I'm not saying because those dogs were sentient. The book was narrated by the dogs, but in this case, I just love this idea of like dogs living wild. I
Yeah.
love that idea.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I was
I
going to
want to
say, I
read
was
that
going
one.
to warn you about it because sometimes it's not always a happy ending for the dogs. But if you've read
Sure.
15 Dogs,
Yeah,
you'll be fine with it. Yeah.
yeah, that's what I figured. So, I mean, because 15 Dogs broke my heart too, right?
Mine too.
Um,
Mine too. But I
but it's
loved it at the
so
same
good.
time. I was like, it's such
Yep.
a great book.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to think about a bunch of domestic dogs. Like, would they become wild? Would they form this like little pack of just wild dogs living in the forest and no longer giving a shit about their owners?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's a cool premise.
I have to laugh because on TikTok there's a sound that they put on. They'll show pictures or like a video of their dog like totally relaxed and living a very comfortable indoor life. And then it's that I can't remember if it's the Green Mile or something where the voiceover is Andy, I don't think I could make it out on the outside. So I always think about that with dogs. Like the ones that are very comfortable probably would be like, oh hell no, I'm not gonna go, live in the wild. I don't
I don't know if my Jessie would last very long.
know. No,
I don't
she would not.
know.
No,
I mean,
I
she
love
would
Josie.
eat whatever she found. I don't think she would. I would be concerned about that, although I don't think she's a great hunter. So she wouldn't, I don't know if she would eat the rabbits or squirrels or anything, but like any random poo or garbage, she would be on. But otherwise, no, she wouldn't do
Oh,
well.
that's too funny. Okay, so the next book again came from Eden Mills last year, and it just dawned on me. I don't think I'm always saying the author's name, so I need to start saying all their author names. But you'll see it in the show notes anyway. But this is by Brett Popplewell, and I did hear him speak, and it's called Outsider. And the subtitle is An Old Man, a Mountain, and the Search for a Hidden Past. And it said just when journalist Brett Popplewell first learned about an aging former stuntman who was living alone in a school bus on a mountain, running day and night through blizzards and heat waves, he was intrigued and bewildered. So he actually did make a number of trips, he said, to interview him because he said in other books that he's written, he could just do the research or whatever. But here he had to go and find the guy in the woods. So it was always challenging to locate where he was. But I think I feel like it was something like 4 trips to interview him. And I just think it kind of reminded me a little bit his style, although I haven't read it yet, of maybe like Jonathan Krakauer, just that
Mhm.
kind of nonfiction. That's the vibe I got from it. So I'm really excited to read this. I'm not necessarily saying this is the subject matter that would intrigue me the most, but he spoke so eloquently about the process that I definitely had to buy this book. And I really was glad I sat in on his session.
Yeah. I was going to say, as you're describing it, I'm like, that's another Rebecca book. To me, that
Totally. Yeah.
like a Rebecca book. Yeah,
Yeah. I love nonfiction. Yeah.
I know you do. I know you do. Speaking of Rebecca books, boom.
Woohoo!
So we have Where the Falcon Flies by Adam Schultz, one of Rebecca's favorites. He is an adventurer. He okay, if you do not have if you are have maybe have, how do I describe this? I like my adventure lived vicariously. If you're
Yep.
like myself and you like to be adventurous vicariously, then you need to pick up Where the Falcon Flies because it's his journey. He paddled from Lake Erie, like one end of Lake Erie, all the way Lake Erie, Lake Ontario, through the St. Lawrence. He then like bushwhacked through parts of Quebec and Labrador, got back into a paddle when he hit Labrador City, back into a canoe, sorry, when he hit Labrador City, and then paddled all the way up to the tundra, right, to the Arctic,
Yeah.
following the path of the falcon. When he had been inspired one day when he had stepped outside his door and saw a falcon fly by. Um, he's a little crazy in the best of ways in that I could
Yeah.
never do what he does. It frightens me a little bit to read it when he's, paddling through a storm or just, but it's fascinating. And his writing takes you right into the moment, which is why I end up being so fearful for him at times. I know he survives, but at the same time, I am fearful as I'm reading it because you feel like anything could happen to him.
Yeah. And if you're not following him on social media, you should, because he often will then show clips of I mean, he's got a YouTube channel, his Instagram account and everything. He shows a little bit of, him paddling along. And he also, and I just want to give this shout out, he says he basically is going to write a book every 2 years. He's pretty much on track so far. I think he's written 5 books. And he also, I've interviewed him a few times, so you can go back and look at our podcast and search for his interviews, fabulous interviews. Uh, and he has, and he's committed because he's already told us of what books are coming next. I don't remember if we talked specifically about the subject matter, but I might have been offline. I don't remember, but it's every 2 years, and he is committed to coming back to the podcast every time he writes a book. So I'm really excited about that because I feel the way you do that. You live vicariously through him, and it's something I would never do or could do. And I just think he's amazing. The other thing I want to mention is last year when that book came out, or this year when this book came out, I went to see him in London, uh, do a book talk. And if you haven't yet done it, go see him live. Like when the next book comes out and he's promoting, go see him live. He does a great video chat, I mean, he's live, but the video behind him is showing the different things he's done. It's a great production and he is hilarious. Yes, he's funny in his book sometimes, but he's such an easygoing. I just don't think he has a fear gene. You know what I mean? So he's really fun to listen to. So I highly recommend going to see him and listen to him live. He's amazing.
Yeah. Um, I should add to that. There's a lot of history as he goes through this book. As he's paddling along, he mentions historical sites throughout Ontario and stuff, which I loved because
Yeah.
I then went and added places to my for little day trips. I'm like, I got to go check out that lighthouse, or I've got to go check this out. It's fascinating. I'm not a
Yeah.
history person. I am becoming a history person, but it was also I really enjoyed that aspect of it too,
Yeah.
and
I
how little he can eat in one day. to like get himself through a day of paddling. Like
Yeah.
for
And can I just say one other thing really quick about that book? What I loved about it was because he can only carry so much with him when he's on, when he's going, because he's got to think about the weight of carrying everything. But in this book, more than all the others, he really met up with people just serendipitously. I don't know how to say that word that way, but anyway, you know what I'm saying. He just met people along the way who just would then say, "Hey, let us get you some food," and then they would provide food to him because I think he loses a lot of weight when he's out there because think about the energy he's expending when he's canoeing and stuff. Anyway,
yeah,
so I love that because so many of his fellow Canadians reached out and helped him along the way. And that was something that was different because usually he's out in the middle of nowhere. But in this case, I loved every time he had that interaction with people. I just thought that was really beautiful. I thought just it
yeah.
said something really beautiful about Canada as a country and the generosity of the people. So I love that.
I
As an
think so.
American, I
Yeah,
love that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And he has a very supportive partner who will send packages to him at different post offices along the way. Yeah, it's really fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah. And he has two kids now. So I think, ugh, that's scary. So
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. My next book is actually a gift from you that you
Oh,
gave me for my birthday. And I have to laugh. The subject, I would not have picked this book up on my own. So I'm not sure how much I will like it, but we
hmm.
will see. It is an author that I love, though. Cory
Oh,
Doctorow.
yes, yes.
Yeah. And you had said your mom was kind of like about it, I think,
Yeah, I think,
maybe.
or my aunt. It might have been my aunt
Oh,
Paula who read it, and she was like, "Meh."
I think I'm like Paula a little bit. So So it's Red Team Blue is a Martin Hench novel. And it starts out, it just says something about a novel of cryptocurrency, global financial shenanigans, and the secret wars that underlie the modern world, which I would never pick this book up, but because it's Cory Doctorow, and I think I love his point of view about the world, I think I might like it. So I will report back after
Yeah,
I've read it. But that is on my list. And it's a short little novel, so I don't
yeah.
think it will take that long to get through it. So
I am interested to hear if you like it or not, because I know you really admire him as a
yeah,
writer and as a person. So I'm interested to see if you like the book.
yeah. And I do appreciate the gift because again, it's one I wouldn't have picked up,
Yeah.
but I am kind of interested because I do really like him. So yeah.
Okay, my next book is book two in a trilogy. And actually, I am very excited because I get to speak to this author next week for the podcast. And it is The Song of Wrath by Sarah Raleigh. So I think I brought the first book in the series last month to our YouTube to this episode. So this is book two, the continuing saga of, oh, I can't remember the main character's name. Oh, Iris, who can't die. So it's a group of Iris and a group of teenagers who something happens. It's set in like I think 1890s, 1800s London. Uh, Something happens that gives them special powers, and then there's a group of rich white people who want to take advantage of their special powers. Uh, there's the end of the world that could be happening. Can it be prevented? It's a lot on Iris's shoulders and I just really enjoy these books and I'm looking forward to book three, which is now out. And Sarah has another book coming out in January, not of this series, I'm not sure if it's a series or not or standalone, but I'm excited to read that too. She also has beautiful covers, like a
Yeah,
beautiful
it's
cover.
gorgeous.
And her new one is the Queen of, I can't remember, but it's another beautiful cover. But I'm looking forward to talking to Sarah about these books, about her new books, about the Black female rage. Like it's really. I'm looking forward to it. It should be fun,
So
interesting.
is that just a trilogy or does that one go beyond the third
I
book?
think it's just a trilogy,
Okay.
as much as I know. Yeah.
Okay. Right. My next book, I actually started this one a while back and then something else grabbed my attention and I put this to the side, but I actually was at the Bookkeeper or my favorite independent bookstore right across the border in Sarnia, Ontario, and it is Skid Dogs and it's a memoir and it says yeah, I'll just read this because it doesn't have a description of the book, but An exquisitely written account of the brutality of coming of age, Skid Dogs dives into the lives of a group of small town teenage girls, a denunciation of the patriarchy. At its core, Skid Dogs celebrates female friendships and mother-daughter relationships in all their complicated glory. And what happens is these girls, they go along these railroad tracks. I can't remember where. I think it's like in British Columbia somewhere. And a body is found there. So in a place that they always hung out and just because in a small town, because it's a very small town, they always felt safe because, a small town, this is where they hung out. Then a body is found. And can't remember now if it was a friend of theirs or not. I don't remember, but it's a memoir. So, because now it's many years later and it's about this woman telling the story of this group of girls and their coming of age. And it sounded really good. So,
Yeah, I want to read that one too.
yeah. And I think it actually made one of the CBC like nonfiction or memoir lists when it came out. I think it's been out I bought it this year or last year at some point. So I think it made one of the CBC lists.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay, my last book I finished like half an hour before we started recording. Again, it's another favorite of Rebecca's, and she brought it to the podcast already. And it is Brickworks by Lucy
Mm.
A.M. Black. Rebecca, you were spot on. This book is amazing. It's amazing. So check back. Rebecca did an interview with Lucy several months ago. So go through our back list of the episodes to find it because I listened to it at the time. I now want to go and re-listen to the interview now that I've read the book. It's a historical fiction set in, it moves from like I think it starts 1879 in Scotland, but then moves through the lives of two men who meet up in Ontario. They actually officially, I think they meet in Buffalo, find their way to Ontario where they decide to open up a brickworks. So it's their journey, the story of them building a business together and a community because they find their way in that community. It is their friendship. It is the most beautiful friendship I've ever read in a book. Like it is brilliant. She does, I can't imagine how much research she does for a
Yeah.
book because the details are fantastic. But often I find sometimes if there's too many details, you can feel like you're drowning in it, but you don't with her. It's
Mhm.
just they're spattered at the perfect place. I was telling Rebecca when I was about three-quarters finished, reading it made me feel nostalgic for a time period of which I never lived in. It's like early 1900s, and which I don't really want to live in. I love
Okay.
living modern day. I've never had an urge to live in the past. So her writing is just so brilliant that way. But the friendship between these two men, so
I
good.
totally agree. That is what I loved most about that book was that relationship between these two men. Because I think I even said in my review, or when I talked to her, is I don't really necessarily remember like two male characters bonding in such a way. I don't know that that's a normal thing that we come across in novels, right? So I loved their relationship. They were brothers. They just were
Sure.
so, yeah, they just were brothers. And also, it's like you said about the research, she does talk about her research because she's using primary source material. She puts her heart and soul, and I mean, it's her passion. But it's like you said, she puts all of that, she weaves it all into the story so seamlessly, you don't even realize that you're learning something,
Yeah.
right? Because it's just so beautifully a part of the story. And I was telling you too, after I interviewed her, she so kindly sent me a copy of another one of her novels called Eleanor Curtin. And I read that, and I have to admit, I actually even loved that one more than the Brickworks. And I love the Brickworks, like 5 stars plus. But Eleanor Curtin, I loved so much. So I can't wait till you read that one
Me
and see
too.
how you feel. Because that one actually has the same thing, it's set in Ontario, historical, uh, characters that are really fascinating, but it's a love story too. But it's not just a love story. It's really about community. And I'm telling you, and I'm not somebody who reads romances, but I love that romance so much. So
Yeah.
I love Lucy. She's
Yeah.
amazing.
Oh, when I was reading this, it made me, but when I was about halfway through, I realized because I'm not a huge reader of historical fiction,
Yeah,
but I
neither.
did realize I'm like, I love historical fiction set in Ontario. Like I knew I loved anything set in Newfoundland, and now I'm adding Ontario to it. And especially, not that this is set in Toronto, but they do visit Toronto a couple times. And so I love seeing anything where Toronto is the setting in that's where Helen Humphreys comes in. Like a lot of her books that I've read have been set in Toronto in the past. And I love seeing a place that I'm familiar with, but seeing it in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's such a good book. Even
So,
like get to the food that they're eating, the
yeah.
clothes, like it's just so good.
It's funny too, because I even said with that book, when he goes into uh he goes into like his benefactor, he goes into his home, and
Mhm.
just the way she describes, I felt like I was in that sitting room or whatever. I felt like I was just immersed in that whole experience and that time period. And like I said, you're getting two enthusiastic thumbs
Yeah.
up from us for this author and this book.
Yeah. I want more people to read it because it should be read more. We should be seeing it all over the place. Yeah,
I agree.
so good.
My next book is another author that we interviewed, and we received copies of his first book. This is his second, but I actually think he might be on to his fourth already. I mean, this guy's churning them
Wow.
out, which is The Village Hall Vendetta by Jonathan Whitelaw. And it is a cozy mystery series about a guy and his mother-in-law. And I'm not a big cozy mystery reader, but I love these two characters. And they have this sort of clearly they love each other, but there's still some of that, push pull of being a mother-in-law and a son-in-law. And I really enjoyed the first book. And so I bought the second book and I haven't read it yet. And like I said, I think honestly, I know the third one's out, and I don't know if the fourth one's out or if it's planned to be out.
Yeah.
So I'm so excited for him that this series has really captured people's imagination and they're reading it. And it looks like there will continue to be more books in the series. And it's like you said, Tara, when we interviewed him, you think you read a lot more mysteries than I do. Well, series maybe. And you even said you hadn't come across like a mother-in-law, kind of son-in-law
Yeah.
experience before.
Yeah. I know I really enjoyed the first one. I haven't gotten around to the second either. I have to pick it up because yeah,
Yeah.
I did really enjoy their chemistry. It's so fun.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've come to the end of the books that I've read from my shelf. So I'm going to share three books that I purchased that I've added to my shelves this
Yay.
past month. So we recently, as a family, went on a camping trip to Tobermory, which is up the Bruce Peninsula here in Ontario. And before I go anywhere, even if it's a camping trip, because usually there's like a little town close by, and of course Tobermory, we camped at the Bruce Peninsula National Park, but Tobermory was like 10 minutes away. So I found a little independent bookstore and we made a visit in because I love visiting independent bookstores. And my first one, I purchased three because I like to buy in threes. I don't know why, but and it is Book and Islands in Ojibwe Country, Traveling Through the Land of My Ancestors by Louise Erdrich. I had not even,
Oh,
it's just a small little book. I love the cover. I love Louise's writing, and I had not even heard of this book. So as soon as I saw it, I instantly grabbed it. I don't know if it's a recent publishing, like recently published. Nope, I like a hardcover edition was published in 2003, so it's a pretty old
oh,
book. So, anyways, I'm really looking forward to this one. I'll add it to my nonfiction to be read stack.
cool. Well, that's good to know. Yeah, I don't know her. I just know like the really big titles, so I wouldn't know her
Yeah.
backlist very well at all. So this is a book. So a couple years ago, Shauna and I, who was my podcast partner from the beginning, we did that Read Native 21. I guess it was 1920 or 2019, 2021. We did this Read Native challenge that was put out by the American Indian Library Association. And I read a book by Christine Day, and this was a follow-up book, and I bought it. I, I mean, I enjoyed her first book. It was a juvenile title, so probably like fourth through sixth grade, maybe. And I bought this one because at the time that she was publishing this book, I think it was already being banned in the United
Oh,
States because God, we can't, oh my gosh, we can't hear about people's lives who aren't white. But anyway, so I bought it, and it's called We Still Belong, and it says, yeah, it says the audience is ages 8 to 12. It says Wesley's hopeful plans for Indigenous Peoples Day and asking her crush to the dance go all wrong until she finds herself surrounded by the love of her Indigenous family and a community at the intertribal powwow. And that's one of the things I really loved about her book initially. Her other book that I had read was it's always about community. It's about sort of rediscovering or discovering your indigeneity, and so I wanted to support her just because, I mean, it's just so ridiculous what's
mm,
going on here with banning books by people for BIPOC. And so that's why I bought it. And I will obviously, when I'm done with it, I'll donate it. I know this wouldn't be a book I would keep. I would want to pass it on to a young reader. So, but I am looking forward to reading because I did enjoy the other book that I read, and I just wanted to support her as an author. So,
yeah, nice.
yeah.
Okay. The second book, the cover attracted me instantly. So here we go. It is Days at the Morisaki Bookshop by Satoshi Yagasawa, translated by Eric Azawa. So I have never heard of this, neither the book nor the author, but I mean, look, it's a bookstore and there's a cat. Like I was
Yeah.
attracted. And I've been hearing a lot about Japanese translated books lately, just in the book community. It's just out there in the sphere. And I never read any Japanese translated books, I don't believe. So I thought, well, this looks like a good place to start.
Yeah.
And
What's it about? Does it say
yes,
somewhere? Yeah.
so 25-year-old Takako has enjoyed a relatively easy existence until the day her boyfriend, the man she expected to wed, casually announces he's been cheating on her and is marrying the other woman. Suddenly, her life is in free fall. She loses her job, her friends, her acquaintances. In the depths of despair, she receives a call from her distant uncle. He is an unusual man who's always pursued something of an unconventional life, especially after his wife left him out of the blue 5 years earlier. He runs a secondhand bookshop in Tokyo's famous book district, and he invites her to come and help him and work at the bookstore. It sounds
That
pretty
sounds
awesome.
that sounds good.
Yeah, yeah. And again, like short. So I have really high expectations for this book. It just
Yeah.
sounds really good, and the cover, and I don't know. So I'm super
Okay,
excited.
yeah. Yeah, I can't wait to hear about that one because that
Yeah,
one sounds really good. I've
yeah.
marked that one especially. So, okay, I'm going way back in time for this one because let's see when it was published, 2003. So, I was talking to someone, I don't remember who it was, and I mentioned this book in our conversation, and then I thought I looked to see if I could get a copy of it from my library, but I couldn't get a copy. I don't remember. Well, I wanted to own a copy, and I thought, well, I don't know if I can buy it or not because I love this book. It made a real impression on me. So it's called Lois Lowry, The Silent Boy,
Oh,
and it's fiction, but it's about this girl who. Let me see if it says it here. Yeah, it says Katie, the precocious 10-year-old daughter of the town doctor, befriends a boy with like a learning disability. Uh, they use the R word in here. That's how old this book is. They use the inappropriate word that we don't use anymore. But anyway, here's what I loved about this book and why I was talking about it. Because at the beginning of every chapter, there is a picture.
oh, I love that.
And wait till you hear about what the pictures are. So what Lois Lowry did, who wrote The Giver, one of my all-time favorite books. I've read it many times. I love Lois Lowry so much. What she did was she took pictures either from her own family album or friends or family gave her pictures to use, or she went into used bookstores, I mean, used antique stores and bought pictures of old family members. And then she weaves a story of these people in this store in the book. I thought that was the most brilliant sort of, I don't even know what word to use, but I thought that was such a brilliant idea to take strangers and weave a story. Because what's so funny is I buy pictures of people from antique stores, like old picture of people that like speak to me. I look at them, and if they sort of speak to me, I buy them. And I always laugh and say that after I'm gone, people in our family will be like, "Oh, who's this?" And it's like, no, they're not related to us. I just bought them. But so I'm trying to keep those pictures separate. But I just think there's something kind of sad about when people's pictures end up in antique stores. You think,
Yeah.
what happened, right? So I love that she created a whole story, and I loved the story. When I was talking to someone, I was reminded of it, and I thought, I think I need to own it. So I went to ABE Books, which is always the place I go when I'm trying to find a book that's out of print or that I want to purchase because they've been around for a million years. It's what libraries often refer people to, ABE Books. So I did. I bought this book. I'm looking forward to reading it this year and just kind of being reminded of why I love Lois Lowry.
Can I confess I have not read any Lois Lowry, not even The Giver.
Read The Giver. And this is what I always
I
tell people. Read, oh, read
Yeah.
yeah, it doesn't take long. Read The Giver, and then you have to, I always tell people, I recommend this always, my whole librarian life. Read The Giver and then let me know when you've read it. And then I'm going to send you the speech that she gave when she accepted the book award. Oh, I can't think of the Newbery. When she won the Newbery for that book, she gave this speech and she talks about some things that I don't want to give away at all.
Yeah.
And it just enhanced that book and that story to me so much. So I always tell people, read the book and then you've got to read Lois Lowry's speech. So if you do read it, let me know and I will send you her speech.
Oh, I will. I mean, my
Yeah.
oldest, Keegan, has read it like
Yeah.
years ago, and that's where I got my copy from. I'm like, I
Yeah.
should read this. And it's been on my shelf and I haven't gotten around to it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I don't know if it'll be this fall, but you know what? In 2025 for sure.
Well,
I'm gonna,
maybe I'll send Keegan the link to, or I can send it to you and you can give it to her because she might enjoy reading that. Even and you don't have to remember the full story, but it's just what Lois Lowry says about the whole experience. And she gives this little tip away that just blew my mind that I loved. So yeah.
okay. Exciting. Okay. My
Okay.
last book, a nonfiction. It's a collection of essays. David Adams Richards, Murder
Oh,
and Other Essays. I have no idea what it's about. I remember this coming out and I missed it. Having said that, I'm like, what? Just watch it just came out, and I'm like, no, 2019. So yeah, I missed this one, and I'm like, obviously, I'm picking it up. I don't even need to know what it's about. I just need his name on it, and it's done. I can't wait to read what he. I think it's just a collection of him just talking about different topics, murder and other essays. And even when I don't, because I'm not always going to agree with him about everything he says. Another recent essays of his that I don't always agree with him, and I'm totally fine with that because I just love his writing. And
yeah.
so yeah, and I think there's poetry in it as well. So there's like um, essays, and then some poems, and then it moves back to essays. So I just love the way that
Hmm.
it's organized as well. Anyways, there we go.
What's it? Does it say what the theme is? Kind of like what is the like murder is like kind of a
Yeah, I know it's kind of dark, but I mean, that at the same time, it made sense to me because his books are kind of, and there's usually
yeah.
there's often a murder or a death in them.
Yeah.
Let's see. His loyal readers may feel they know him well, but they will also know that David Adams Richards is a writer who never fails to surprise. This new collection of essays, his first in a quarter century, is rich with revelations and insights deepening our appreciation for this major talent. Murder and self-deception involved in the allure of evil is one of Richard's great subjects. The title of this book refers to a group of essays on a hitchhiker's unnerving proclamation, on the killers of the Miramichi, on Caligula, and on the villains of Richard's beloved Russian classics. What sounds so good? Anyways,
It does.
yeah. I'm
Wow.
sorry, the sun is coming and shining right on me now, so I apologize. My lighting sounds really weird, but you can see the book, and that's all that matters. Anyways,
Yeah.
I've added some. I'm super excited for because my bookshelves. These are all my TBR books. I have quite a few not fiction books, but only a few. Like it's just this one shelf right there of nonfiction. Even most of those are like my book journals that I put on the same shelf. So I need to add to my TBR of nonfiction books. So I'm super excited for these 2 editions.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, there we go. That's
Well,
mine for the month.
okay. Well, my last book is I went to the literati bookstore. It's an independent bookstore, very famous in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And I picked up this book. I was just browsing and I decided to buy this. I, Rebecca Solnit is new to me, but I believe she's been around a long time and she's
Yeah.
very well known. I just didn't know her. And it's Recollections of My Non-Existence. And it just says, in this portrait of the artist as a young woman, Rebecca Solnit describes her formation as a writer and as a feminist in 1980s San Francisco in an atmosphere of gender violence and the exclusion of women from cultural arenas.
Mm.
And is that she explores the forces that liberated her, books themselves, the gay community that presented a new model of what else family and joy could mean, and her eventual arrival in the spacious landscapes and overlooked conflicts of the American West. And I moved to California in the mid 80s, and so I feel like some of what she's talking about may resonate with me, and it just sounded interesting. And I sometimes I really do enjoy reading memoirs of people who I don't know anything about, and although I think she's well known as a writer, she's new to me, and I just sort of felt like this just kind of feels like it will speak to me. So that one
Yeah,
sounded really interesting.
that sounds
So
really good. I
yeah,
feel like I just added one of her books because as soon as she said her name, I was like, oh, but like, I don't know if she
yeah,
has a new book, but I feel like I've recently been looking or added one of her books to a TBR list or something.
yeah. She did just, I think she either just had something come out or is coming out something. And that's why I say I think she's probably well known to a lot of people, just not, I just didn't know her.
Yeah.
So but yeah, I she does have something I think very
Okay.
recently out. So
Go do a little Google after we're finished here because
yeah, exactly.
you
I
know,
will just say that we will be going to Eden Mills. It's on the 8th of September. It's that Sunday, and it's in Eden Mills, Ontario. And we are doing a podcast after that as our wrap up. So if you're interested in who we hear and what books we purchase at that time, definitely give us a listen on our podcast.
and I think that's it. Great
Yeah.
month of reading and more to look forward to.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rebecca. Happy reading, everyone.